Alright, so the last of the PS1 Crash trilogy, Crash Bandicoot Warped, and man do I have memories of this one. This might have been the first Crash game I've played, either that or it was Crash of the Titans, but if I say my first Crash game was Titans, I might be a victim of gang violence. There's a lot I remember of my first experience with this game. Even though I grew up with the Wii, I was still mesmerized by the worlds, enjoyed all of the levels, got scared by the cutscenes with the bosses, didn't know how gems worked because I was dumb, had my PS1 crap out on me right as I got to the last world. Never mind, this game sucks actually. No, but really, this is a game I've played to death. If Crash 1 kicked things off and Crash 2 refined the formula, then Crash 3 was perfecting it. This is also a bit of a notable game for not only being the last Crash platformer that Naughty Dog developed, but also being the last unambiguously good mainline Crash game for a long while, actually. From here on out, many games were marred by gameplay people were indifferent to, stagnation, and development problems, although I hear some of the GBA games were good. Now, I wish I could talk about development, but I actually couldn't find much concerning the development of this game, unless you want me to talk to you for 10 minutes about how one of the enemies in the China levels was named Asshole in the files. I did manage to wrangle up a few interesting things, though. Firstly, the well-known Spyro demo. If you input a code on the title screen, you'll be met with a demo for the first Spyro game. This is just one of those cool things from back then that would never happen nowadays. I mean, imagine if you bought a game today that had a demo for another developer's game inside of it. Next, there's the region-specific difficulty. Apparently, this game was made harder in Europe and easier in Japan for some reason. I don't really get locking difficulty options to specific regions. It's kinda like how they didn't give us lost levels in America for a while because they thought it was too hard, to which I say I'll do it as Luigi for you if you let me scream as loud as I want. Yeah, that's something else I haven't mentioned until now. Crash has an entirely different design in Japan that was to make him more cute looking. It's only something really on the box art, although out of all the games, Crash Tag Team Racing was the only one to use this Japanese design in-game for some reason. Even with the modern games, they use this different design on the box art, with CTR Nitro Fueled being the final one to use it, since I guess they thought the Crash 4 design was good enough. That was all the development stuff I could find though, so let's finish off the PS1 trilogy today, starting with the story. So, picking up where the good ending of Crash 2 left off, the Cortex Vortex crashes into this temple releasing a glowy squid, which is actually an evil mask named Uka Uka. It's then shown that apparently Uka Uka wanted Cortex to do the whole world domination thing, which is a bit odd, but I guess it makes sense. This time he hopes to take matters into his own hands, alongside the help of this mysterious new character named Entropy. Once Aku Aku hears that Uka Uka is free, I guess he teleports Crash and Coco to this place called the Time Twister. Uka Uka and Cortex are using it to have enemies stationed throughout time and collect crystals in the past and future. Now it's a journey across time to get the crystals and in between beat some bad guys sent by Cortex. Now, I complimented Crash 2's opening, but I'm gonna dish out even more heavy compliments to Crash 3. The presentation here is great. Uka Uka is such a threatening presence, with him constantly being in the shadows and his voice commanding attention. It's even cooler how before Entropy shows up, you can see him lurking in the background, so that if you notice it right before he makes his reveal, you have some time to wonder what that figure is first. On the topic of Entropy, you know the drill, we need to talk about our new characters. To start off, I really like Entropy. Being the master of time, you can tell by the giant clock, he made the Time Twister itself, which is a really cool detail. Plus, he keeps the train of end puns going, so I can't wait for our next scientist, Incontinence. Of course we got Uka Uka, who sure is a mask. He's pretty cool, and I like the detail of the constant fire on him, and how sometimes he controls Cortex when he's really pissed off. That's about it though. You don't really see him much in this game despite how central of an antagonist he is. Although I do like how his seriousness contrasts Cortex in this game with how he just sort of seems tired at this point. It was a fun direction to take. All of those, though, pale in comparison to our second boss, Dingodile. He's probably my favorite Crash character. I mean, he has a flamethrower, how could I not? I love arson. Again, similar to Uka Uka, you don't get to see much of him, but even then, I just really like his design, being a cross between a dingo and a crocodile, and his boss fight is really fun as well. Finally, he isn't a new character, but I figured it was worth a mention. This is when Aku Aku started being of some sort of importance to these games. He was around before this, but he only served to give you extra hit points, and even then mass for extra lives was a bit random, and I only never questioned it because the mass fit the aesthetic of Crash. Here, though, it's established that Aku Aku is a protector and overseer of sorts for Crash and Coco, which fits in quite nicely with his character and for gameplay context. Also, in relation to the presentation, Crash 3 added this new thing where sometimes before you enter a level, a boss will ring you up on your portal phone and berate you. I always liked these. Not only did they help give a bit more character to the bosses, but also helped to have you interact with Cortex from time to time before the final battle. I have a lot of memories with these, because now I see them as really cool, but when you're 8 years old playing this in a dark room, yeah, my pants are shat. But of course we have to focus on the presentation of the levels, and Crash 2 was really good with the level aesthetic, but Crash 3 just knocks it out of the park. Having the game take place across multiple time periods means the visual variety is through the roof here. We have medieval towns, tombs, Jurassic levels, China levels, and of course since we gotta have our technology stages for the final parts, we have our levels in the future here. Those are only some of the stages that immediately come to mind too. There's even more than that, and all the locations, similar to Crash 2, still look good today. In fact, they might even look better than Crash 2. I honestly don't think I could pick a favorite level theme in this game. I have a lot of favorites here, and think they all remix old ideas in creative ways to make the most out of them for the definitive Crash experience. Just as an example to give a bit more context to what I mean, the Jurassic levels actually take over for the Boulder levels, where here you get chased by a Triceratops with some short breaks in between instead of just the boulders, and I like how the short breaks in between are more involved than just breaking a few boxes and then getting back to it, and generally have full fleshed out 3D and 2D sections. Or how the China levels are animal riding stages, where you actually get to play as Coco this time riding on a new baby tiger. Although when it comes to pure platforming, the future and tomb levels are where it's at, with an honorable mention to the Arabian stages. Speaking of which, I love the Arabian levels at night, not just because they have some fun platforming bits, but they also just look amazing, and the fire from the ninja enemies looks really nice contrasting against the darker color palette. Now, as for the gameplay, this keeps the theme running of taking what worked in Crash 2 and expanding on it and just generally making it better. Crash controls the same as Crash 2, same moves and everything, but what makes it unique is the new powers you're able to get from defeating bosses. It's a bit early, but I figure it's a good time for me to talk about the bosses themselves, and these are easily some of the best in the series for me. Next to Crash 4, Warped has a great spread of quality across all the bosses, which blows Crash 1 and 2 out of the water. Tiny is kinda similar to the Ripperoo fights in the previous games, just being a fun warm-up, but what makes it more memorable is the theming. You fight him in a Roman Colosseum, that's awesome. Then instantly after that, the game hits you with Dingodile. He surrounds himself in crystals, so once you're done dodging his fireballs, you gotta avoid his flame blast so that way he opens up holes in the crystals. Once you bop him, it's a sprint out before the explosion. Or, you know, you could always just slide spin jump over the crystals and hit him that way if you got places to be. Entropy has a fun loop where you gotta dodge these laser beams, then jump over these low shots and crouch under the high ones. After a bit, the platforms move to allow you to jump over to him and hit him. Then it's a rinse and repeat. Definitely a pretty simple, but it can still get close with his speed towards the end. Also, wow, you get fucking eviscerated when you die. And Jin, he was the best boss of the last game, and he certainly doesn't disappoint here. You get to fight him in a spaceship as Coco this time around, in a one-on-one shooting battle. It takes on a similar structure to his fight from Crash 2, shooting at the exposed parts of his mech, but this time, not only does he use all of his attacks at once, he has a lot more of them too. On the flip side though, as you destroy more of the mech's parts, he has less attacks to use. It's a very kinetic and frantic fight that even has a second phase, definitely a highlight of the game. Finally, Cortex has been given a big upgrade since the last game. This fight is a lot more interesting. You gotta dodge his laser blast while not being caught in the middle of the fight between the masks. Then once his barrier goes down, you knock him into the pit. It's fun, but it's a bit more simple, and I actually find myself preferring the fights against the Dingodile, Entropy, and Engine. As mentioned before though, each one you beat gives you a cool new ability to use, so let's check out cool new ability number 1, the Super Belly Flop. Yeah, this sure is a super belly flop. It just increases the area that your belly flop affects and is only used for when steel crates are floating above a pit, and I can only think of like 2 times this happens. This is basically situational incarnate. The moves get a lot better though, starting with the double jump. Now the double jump is really helpful, but you kinda gotta get used to it, since it only works if you use it at the top of your jump. Waiting too little or too long makes nothing happen. To be fair, in the description of the move it does mention this, it's just a little unorthodox. That being said, it is an integral move to Crash's moveset, and I'm happy later games just make it a part of his default moveset. The best one in the game though is the Death Tornado Spin. It lets you glide in mid-air by mashing the spin button, and in combination with the double jump can let you take big jumps and skips through levels. There's also the Fruit Bazooka, which is really cool in concept, but having to stop in place to use it is kind of a pace breaker. I break it out occasionally, but not often. I won't be mentioning the final upgrade just yet, so let's jump instead into the gameplay proper. Crash 3 has a lot more gameplay styles going on than Crash 2. We got tiger riding, swimming, bikes, planes, jet skis, definitely quite a bit more. We'll start with my favorites and then work our way down the line. The tiger here, that I think is named Pura, I don't know, I'm calling it Pura, is fundamentally the same as Polar from Crash 2, but I've always liked Pura's levels more. I love the visuals of the China levels, especially during the nighttime, and I also think the hazards to avoid just make things more interesting. There's flying dragons, rolling barrels, the usual stationary hazards, and when you're collecting all the boxes, you also have to consider the flying boxes that require a dash jump to reach, as well as whether to take the top or bottom paths. The jet ski levels were another personal favorite of mine. I just think controlling the jet ski across these levels is fun, and it can be mostly enjoyable when the levels get more open and make you do more route planning and exploration or collect all the boxes. There's not as much intricate stuff to say about these, I just think they're fun. Swimming levels. I feel like I enjoy these more than most people. They act as a nice shake-up of the gameplay while staying closer to the standard platforming deal than something like the bikes or planes. I feel like 2 stages is the perfect amount for them to have to not overstay their welcome, although maybe 1 more would have been nice. The plane levels are sort of similar to the jet board from Crash 2, nothing I'm dying to replay, but when I'm playing them I enjoy myself well enough. You mostly just fly around and commit war crimes, but by the time I get to the last few things I need to shoot down, I kinda want the war crime committing to end. Finally, there's the bike levels, and yeah, I don't really like these much. For the box gem, you need to practice caution and slowness, which is the opposite of what you have to do for the crystal, considering you need to come in dead first, no exceptions. This means most of the time you need to go for the gems separate from the crystal, and going around some of these turns good enough to not lose first place is a nightmare. But oh, the other drivers, they glide across them perfectly. The other drivers are mainly what I hate about these stages, since sometimes they like to just chill in front of you, making it kind of annoying to pass them. I especially hate that they can just see you later, bitch, restart the stage. I mainly find it ironic that the bike is so underwhelming here, considering not too long later they make Crash Team Racing, which is one of the best kart racers ever in my opinion. The vehicles are the main new parts here, since the fundamental platforming gameplay is pretty much the same as Crash 2. What does Crash 3 have to make it a significant improvement over the prior game? easy, some of the best level design and use of level gimmicks in the entire series. While Crash 2 had a fair amount of great level design, there were some levels that dragged their feet. Meanwhile, Crash 3 not only ups the ante with each new stage, but also doesn't have anything that compares to the worst that Crash 2 had to offer. Take the tomb levels as an example. The first level starts out with you entering the building and has a focus on these moving platforms. The second level plays around more with these switches that open walls or move platforms, as well as the oil on the floor. And the final level has a complete focus on the rising water. Each level has something new going on while at the same time not straying too far from the core level theme. Admittedly, not every level theme has as drastic of a change as these, but it's still within the same ballpark and keeps things fun. Combine this with all the pros Crash 2 had going on with a box and color gems, and you have this as an easy contender as the best game in the entire series. Honestly, the only stage I even have much of a problem with is the secret level Hot Coco. The whole deal of this stage is that there are nitro boxes blocking the goal. If you want to get out, you can make a mad dash for the nitro detonation switch and leave, but if you want to get the gem, you gotta explore the entire area to collect all the boxes. Now, if they wanted to try an open stage, I think the jet ski was the best way to go about it, and I like how since checkpoints are kind of scattered around the area, you can plan when you hit them, but getting the gem is kind of annoying. There are boxes all over the area, and with this draw distance, that means you have to comb the place to make sure you didn't miss out on anything. It isn't horrible, it just gets boring and tedious when you only have like 1 or 2 boxes left. Even then though, Hot Coco only being one stage out of like 2 I dislike in this game is pretty good considering it isn't even as close to being as annoying as something like Dingodile or the Lab from the previous games. Speaking of stuff from the previous games, I want to mention the backtracking, which is about the same as Crash 2 in terms of quantity. Honestly, it's stopped being a problem for me since Crash 2, and doesn't detract from either of these games. I just figured since I said something about it before, it was at least worth a mention. One thing I do like, though, is that for a few revisits for the colored gems, the paths they take lead you right to an exit, so you never have to replay a lot of the level, which is nice. And for the yellow gem in particular, the new entrance starts you right at the end of the level. Also, I find Crash 3 is a lot better in having less in-level back and forth than Crash 2. I can only remember 3 instances of backtracking, being in the 2 future levels and in Tomb Time. The future levels are both relatively similar in their backtracking, having you take an alternate route and then go back to recollect some boxes. Meanwhile, Tomb Time is more like Crash 2 backtracking, of needing you to cover 2 different routes. None of these are particularly aggravating, I just think Crash doesn't really work well in these in-level backtracking scenarios, especially with the camera still fighting you on it. Honestly though, Crash 3 is one of those games that's all the little things I remember about it. Stuff like the increased effort to characterize a lot of the bosses in their fights. Dingodile giving his foreboding line.
You thrashed me, mate. No worries, but you'll soon be up against much worse.
And Entropy's starting and ending lines.
Now you're on my time, you little skunk! Give me the crystals! My time is up. But yours soon will be too.
They aren't a ton, but they add a nice level of detail that wasn't there with the bosses before. There's also smaller bits like the cool level of the time warps and how each of them show a different picture for each level. The secret warp room showing a bunch of these identical minions being given clothes and sent to the appropriate time period. And I love the new sound effect for collecting crystals or gems. It makes it feel so much more accomplishing to grab them in comparison to Crash 2. That's it though, so let's move on to our final boss, why don't we? Alright, Cortex punted, final power collected, game, set, and match.
Bandicoot, there are still the gems! We still have a chance to try 'em!
Huh, that's weird. I thought I got all the gems. Well, actually, no, I didn't, because beating the game still means there's one major collectible left for you to grab. Kinda scary I didn't remember that. I must be getting hit with the YouTube reviewer amnesia. The final collectible again is related to the final upgrade you receive, the Crash Dash Boots. All they let you do is run, but these serve a double purpose, since now if you need to go back to get gems, say if you got a colored gem and you return to the stage it was needed, you can speed through stages you've already run through, and they also help you move quicker to get those time trial relics. These are collectibles you can earn when you come back to a stage after beating it. It's a mad dash for the end, and some boxes turn into these time crates which stop the timer for the amount of seconds on it. This is really where you put your skills to the testing, is where those big skips I mentioned earlier come into play, since you're able to shave off good time if you know what you're doing. They come in Sapphire, Gold, and Platinum. Sapphire is basically a participation award. If you don't at least get a Sapphire, I don't know what to tell you. It's the bare minimum you need for 100%. Gold is a step beyond, definitely far from impossible, but requires a fair bit more effort. Plus, getting all these lets you get a secret gem from Coco and make your completion go to 105%. Then there's Platinum, which is just there if you really hate yourself. They aren't impossible to get, I was able to get a couple during this run, but some of these levels, holy shit. I think the relics are fun and encourage you to look at levels differently to shave off time, but it isn't always fun. Some levels just don't feel like they were designed with going fast in mind. The first water level had me working for that gold relic for a while, because it just doesn't feel like these water levels were supposed to be rushed. Or there's also the Jurassic levels, where for the fastest time you have to run during the chases, but running during the chases makes it harder to react to the obstacles coming up. It's not every level. I actually found that the relics made the bike levels fun, and made the Pura levels extremely fun and energetic, but some of these things aren't made for rushing. They also amplify some smaller problems that don't matter at all in normal gameplay, but really get under my skin when doing time trials. Stuff like how jumping on the monkey bars when moving too fast is a 90% chance you'll fall off instantly, or how slight changes in enemy patterns can completely throw off the movement you do. The worst of it was getting stuck on straight collision. It literally looks like I'm running against nothing and it pisses me off. And I imagine these annoyances are only amplified when going for platinums. It's actually a bit of a bucket list item for me to get all the platinum relics in a few Crash games, and if I try, it'd probably be with this one, but so far the only game I've done it in is the GBA game Huge Adventure. These unlock the secret warp room with extra levels and routes through previously explored levels. Basically, it replaces the Crash 2 secret exits, which have been mostly removed. There's 2 secret exits you can find which aren't hidden nearly as well or as cleverly as in Crash 2. Whereas in that game I thought all the secrets were telegraphed well and weren't impossible to figure out, although last time I forgot to mention the secret bonus room in Unbearable, which was a bit dumb. But in Crash 3, these 2 secret levels are found in areas that kinda require you to already need to know about them. The sign in Road Crash to get to Hot Coco is a bit weird and it could have been telegraphed more, but personally the secret in Dynamite to get to Eggipus Rex upsets me more. First off, you have to jump into a pterodactyl which will usually kill you, and secondly, this pterodactyl is tucked away on the yellow gem root of the stage and is surrounded by other pterodactyls that would kill you. Like, come on guys. It's not like it matters much though, cause these levels aren't required, and honestly, Eggipus Rex is more of a mini-level than anything. While I do miss the secrets Crash 2 had going on, it isn't that big of a loss, and honestly, the secret warp room thing is probably better handled in this game. Anyway, as I was saying, every time you collect 5 time trial relics, you open up a new stage in this hidden warp room. There's 2 hidden entrances, one for Hang 'em High to get the yellow gem, and one for Future Frenzy to get its hidden end box gem, as well as 3 unique stages. Ski Crazed is another really fun jet ski level, and the sunset look makes it visually striking, which also goes for Hot Coco as well. Area 51 and Rings of Power, though? I don't know. Area 51 is just another bike stage, just now it's in the dark. And man, I complained about getting bumped by opponents before, but these UFOs fucking hate me, dude. This is stupid. And going for the gold relic in this game made me want to kill myself by the end of it. Then there's Rings of Power. My favorite stage to forget is in the game. I mean, this one isn't horrible, it's not nearly as bad as I found Area 51. It's just so nothing that I can't even develop anything meaningful enough to continue talking about it. After collecting all your time trial relics and collecting the gems and relics from the stages in the hidden warp room, you're ready to do this song and dance for the second time on the fourth time, and just like that, Cortex is defeated again. The pieces are in place for either Crash 4 or Wrath of Cortex because split timeline moment, and we close the book on Crash Bandicoot Warped. Now, I'm not sure if you've caught on, but I really like this game. It secures a place as one of my favorite platformers, and would have been one of my favorite games generally had it not been dethroned by a little collection that was released nearly 20 years later. If you haven't played Crash 3 yet, come on, get out there and give it a go, it's a really fun time. But we're not done with the Crash Marathon yet, no, we just closed out the PS1 trilogy. I mean, you didn't actually think I wasn't gonna cover the remakes these games got, did you? So, here's what we're gonna do. There's 2 new games coming out, both in franchises I really like, so we're gonna stop this train for just a moment to go off onto the side and cover those games, but once we're done, we're gonna get right back on the Crash train and cap things off with Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy, so I hope you'll join me for all of those. With that, I hope you enjoyed the video, take care, and I will see you all later.